Hey YouTube, RicoKnows here. I was asked to make my top 10 wide receivers for next football season. Usually I just do the top 10 group of 5 because I like to name a bunch of obscure guys people don't usually know. A lot of you guys know sports. A lot of you guys know the football teams. So now it comes down to, well, who does Rico like for next season? And my top 10 wide receivers probably don't match any list you've seen anywhere in America. And that's okay. We're all entitled to have our own opinions. We can all be subjective in this regard. The difference is I'll never agree with those guys because I'd agree with them, but then we'd both be wrong. And I don't ever want to be wrong. So I'm going to tell you my top 10 wide receivers, and everybody else can be wrong. I'm just going to be right. I did it last season. I was accurate. I was right for the most part. And I'll do it again. So for me, the number one wide receiver going into next season is T-Mac. There's a couple of things that I value when I start evaluating wide receivers, and I'm trying to pull it up on my chart over here real quick. I don't know if you guys can see this, so I don't want to put it in front of you. But I want to tell you that T-Mac, 1,400 yards receiving last year with a quarterback in Noah Fafita who didn't start the whole season. So once Fafita starts games, now there's a level of continuity that's unrivaled by anyone in America. And that's because these young men have been together for like 7 years now. They played at Servite together. They have a knack for finding one another. They know where they're going with it. And then T-Mac's just a freak of nature. He's got the size that no one can handle. He's got a great combination of size, speed, and strength. He will fight you off the line. You can't jam him. You can't beat him in 50-50 balls. He's enormous. He's fast. He's strong. I mean, you see him catching this one-handed catch here. I don't need to tell you who's the DB behind him getting beat. I don't need to tell you who that is. You can see the jersey number, and you can see the jersey. It says Colorado on it, just so we're clear. T-Mac is him. So 5th in the nation in receiving yards last year, 10 touchdowns, and I expect him to do better. I expect him to have a full season, a full off season. I think it's going to be a combination worth talking about. One for the ages. So I'm excited for T-Mac. I think he's the number one receiver in the country. And he was coming out of high school. He was a 5-star player who flipped from Oregon late and went to Arizona. Congratulations. Do your thing, T-Mac. The next receiver I have on the list is Luther Burden III. If you've never watched Missouri play, this is a speed demon. Once again, another 5-star wide receiver who Missouri managed to convince to stay home, stay in state, and he is dominating. Luther Burden III tore up the SEC last year. I got to go look for his stats. He was 9th in the country in receiving. I don't even have to look it up. I just remembered it right now. So 9th in the country in receiving, 9 touchdowns. But having that continuity, once again, of the same wide receiver quarterback combination, not having to learn each other, not having to rediscover the wheel, just straight up, we know each other. We've done this 100 times. We've been at practice. Brady Cook is him. I told you guys this 2 years ago. And go find the videos. And now I look at Missouri and I think, yeah, Luther Burden's special. He's going to take the top off of a defense. You can't cover him. You have to zone him, keep him in front of you, and hope for the best. My third best receiver next year is Trey Harris. Trey Harris was a La Tech stud transferring into Ole Miss last year. And among all the transfer wide receivers you thought they were going to have, Trey Harris did not care who you brought in, what you brought in, and who you thought you had. Trey Harris said, in a room full of dogs, I'm the biggest dog. And he dominated. Trey Harris looked great. Some of the stats might not be as gaudy as the rest of these guys, but there's one thing you can't deny is Trey Harris was getting top coverage every single play and beating it. Number one corner, number one safety rolled to his side. Linebackers rolled up to take away his slants. It doesn't matter what you try to do to Trey Harris. That is a beast of a wide receiver. Oh, by the way, he and his quarterback, Jackson Dart, are together. If you haven't noticed, the top 3 are all continuity-driven connections. Yes, they're amazing, talented wide receivers. Everybody on this list is amazingly talented. But when it comes to not having to find a new quarterback, a new wide receiver, timing is important, right? Knowing where this receiver is going to be, they just get a feel for one another. So then you have number 4. Number 4 is the first wide receiver, Ricky White out of UNLV. The first wide receiver that I look at, and I say, he does have a new quarterback. Shout out to Matthew Sluka. But Ricky White is just a man amongst boys. He was 3rd in the country last year in receiving. He is an absolute monster. So I watched him in high school. I watched him. He played at Marietta. They won the state title, and everybody was talking about Eric Gilbert, the 5-star tight end, all-world, Super Gatorade Player of the Year. I'm watching Ricky White win the state title. You can talk all the hype you want before the game. You can talk about stars and recruiting and potential. But during the game, Ricky White I think he scored 2 touchdowns. He dominated this matchup. It was phenomenal. I was so impressed with him. And the one thing I remember was the TV was like, well, he's just a 3-star kid, and he's going to Michigan State. Mind you, this is a team that had talented players everywhere. B.J. Ojolari was on that team. He's already in the NFL. Shout out to LSU. Kamani Vidal was the starting running back. Nearly led the nation in rushing last year out of Troy. All these guys on the same high school team. So Ricky White shined above everybody that game. And he goes to Michigan State. And what he finds out at Michigan State is, I can't start here. And a lot of people thought, well, see, I told you he was a 3-star kid. He can't start there. No. He can't start there because they had Jaden Reed, an NFL stud, just the speed demon, and they had Keon Coleman. And he thought to himself, I don't want to stick around this joint and sit behind these 2 amazing players. I'm going to bounce. So he transferred to UNLV. His quarterback transferred as well. Shout out to Harrison Barnes. Barnes couldn't make the starting lineup. Ricky White ain't never looking back. I love Ricky White's game. You see him, you can tell. I'm going to quote his coach, but I said it before everyone. I said it when he was in high school. This is a Sunday player. This is an NFL player. Ricky White's my number 4 wide receiver. Number 5 wide receiver is Tez Johnson from Oregon. Shout out to Tez Johnson, Bo Nix's half-brother, whatever it is, adopted brother, whatever you want to call it. Tez Johnson leaving Troy, where he was one of the leading receivers, and he goes to Oregon, and he gets so many reps last year. 12th in the nation in receiving just this last season. The only reason I have him back here is he's got to learn a new quarterback. Right? You got Dylan Gabriel coming in. Dylan Gabriel's going to utilize his weapons well. But Tez Johnson, I put him at 5. At 6, Torrey Horton, Colorado State. My number 1 group of 5 wide receiver. I shouldn't say number 1 because obviously Ricky White's there. But I sit corrected. I'm going to say my number 2. My number 2 wide receiver in the group of 5, Torrey Horton, Colorado State. Teaming up with Braden Fowler-Nicolosi. This is going to be year number 2 with this combination. Braden Fowler-Nicolosi was a redshirt freshman last year, got the starting job after the first week due to injury, took over, and never looked back. And he played great. And Torrey Horton had career highs in receptions and yards. And I look forward to him having a great season this upcoming year. I just made a video on him on YouTube about it. I think they're the best combination in the state of Colorado. And I'm sure Colorado fans are, what about Shedeur Sanders and LeJohntay Wester? I'm like, yeah, they're both on the list, bro. They're on the list. I respect them completely. Colin Lacey, Louisville at 7. Colin Lacey was just at South Alabama this last year. He was top 5 in the nation in receiving. To ignore Colin Lacey is crazy to me. Colin Lacey is him. He's great. And he just transferred to a Brom-friendly offense. I said top 5. He was 7th. He just transferred to a Brom-friendly offense. A Brom offense will get you a ton of yards, a ton of receptions. I'm telling you, he's replacing Jamari Thrash. He's in that role that is bound to get 100 receptions. I'm excited for Colin Lacey. I want to see what he does, but he's my number 7 wide receiver next year. Number 8, LeJohntay Wester. LeJohntay Wester, 100 receptions, stud, but you have to learn your new quarterback and get your timing down. I also want to be very clear. I don't believe in Colorado's offensive coordinator. I don't believe in their offensive scheme. I know a lot of people are anticipating it exploding and being great and excelling and doing great things. This is NFL, this. And I don't want to hear it, man. I'm telling you, when I look at schemes of the teams ahead of them on this list, every single one of these teams has a far better offensive coordinator and scheme. Every single team here, even Colorado State. Every single team. You can't argue Louisville. I don't want to hear it. You're not going to tell me that Colorado's better than Brom and the boys. Don't even talk about Oregon. Oregon's results speak for themselves. The go-go offense at UNLV is not to be played with. It will be hired at a Power 5 school soon. Right? Shout out to Marion. And then you got Ole Miss. You ain't messing with Lane Kiffin's offense. Missouri, did you see their offense this year? Did you see Schrader running everywhere? And we're still talking about Luther Burden III. And then Arizona obviously knows what they're doing. Shout out to T-Mac and Noah Fafita. So I think Colorado, LeJohntay Wester is right where he needs to be. And anyone who attacks me for this dude is an 8th. The 8th best wide receiver in the country. Out of 133 starting wide receivers, every team has 5, bro. Every team has 5 wide receivers. 133 schools. Somebody do the math. Over 650, over 670 wide receivers, and you'll start bitching at me because your dude's at 8. Where do you think it goes? Oh, I'm going to put him at 5. Rico, you're way off. I'm off by 3 to you? You fandom subjective nonsense, bro. I just assess results. I assess fits and schemes, and I don't believe in Colorado's scheme on either side of the ball, to be honest. I love the players. Not a big fan of the scheme. Number 9, Rock Taylor, Memphis. Once again, continuity. Seth Hennigan has thrown for over 3,000 yards 3 seasons in a row. I think Memphis goes undefeated. I think Memphis is a playoff team. I think Memphis loses 1 game, max. Love what Memphis brings next year. Rock Taylor's their leading receiver. Blumpkin sees the next guy. They got Mario Anderson Jr. just transferred in from South Carolina. I mean, they just got stud after stud after stud. Shout out to Jair Shorter. Hope he gets on the field and recovers. Number 10, Brendan Presley, one of the all-time leading receivers in Oklahoma State history. Shout out to the Presley brothers. Shout out to, where do they go to school? Bixby. Shout out to their high school and what they're doing. One thing I did want to point out is some of my honorable mentions. I have it listed on Twitter. Honorable mentions, Elijah Surratt. He was an All-American last year at JMU. Came onto the scene. If you don't know, he was a St. Francis transfer initially. Was at St. Francis, transferred into JMU, proved that he can play anywhere, and now he's at Indiana with his coach. Congrats to him. I'm hoping Elijah Surratt has a great year. Xavier Restrepo is a great possession wide receiver for Miami. I told all the MVPs to ladder Restrepo's yards in their bowl game and maybe another game. We won a ton of money betting on Restrepo. Shout out to the MVPs. Chris Mitchell, leaving FIU, transferring to Notre Dame. He's a stat merchant. Got it a bunch against a bunch of scrubs. He looked good on tape. Every time we watched FIU, he was the only semblance of offense they had. Had terrible quarterback play. Shout out to Jenkins, Keontae Jenkins, and who's the other guy? James, the transfer. Grayson James. He transferred up to, I think he transferred to Boston College. He transferred to somewhere to sit the bench. And then you have C.J. Daniels going to LSU. Somebody has to fill in for Neighbors' production, and C.J. Daniels looks to be the part. He did well at Liberty this past season. And then Jabri Barber. Troy transfer, 999 yards receiving, going to A&M. I think he's going to get the ball a lot. I'm excited for it. I think he's a good player. Little undersized, but I still like him. If you'll notice, all the guys on that bottom honorable mentions list, about 4 out of the 5 are under 6 feet tall. Like, they're just little guys. But they're nice to watch. They're fun to watch. I still believe in everybody on this top 10. T-Mac, Burden, Harris, White, Johnson, Horton, Lacey, Wester, Taylor, and Presley. That's my top 10 for next season. I don't care if you're group of 5 or if you're the big deal. I'm going to tell you, though, if you go look at PFF, Pro Football Focus, they're ranking dudes like that Stanford wide receiver. They're ranking a bunch of dudes. I don't care. It's all propaganda nonsense. I'm keeping it real. I do analysis of schemes, fit, continuity, returning production, your teammates, your schedule, and this is what I come up with. This is what I believe in. Your friends don't know, but Rico knows. Stay up, y'all. Peace.